Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Lorenzo from chess.com, the chess.com bots. Lorenzo is rated 1800, and in this game, I got to be frank and earnest. In one book face account, I'm frank, and another, I'm earnest. But really, though, I struggled with this game. I really had a lot of struggles with this game. It was 69 moves in this position. And so we're going to take a look at how I got there. And so, okay, I think I've composed myself. So the computer says I played at an 88% and Lorenzo at an 82%. And there's some really unique things in the end game I want to share with you, which is kind of my tactic that I use. I'm not a grandmaster by any means. As a matter of fact, as you'll see, I make plenty of mistakes. So let's get right to it and see how I got to that win there. Okay, so with the opening, in the opening, I just try to control the center and develop my pieces. That's the main idea. Okay. And if you've seen in some of my other videos, I'm notorious for messing up pawn structure. I love that. I think it's a very underrated thing to do. I think it's a great thing to do. And for me, a lot of times, it's all the difference between a win and a loss. So this here, I push this pawn out. I think the computer is saying, well, the computer says, hey, that is an inaccuracy. And computer knows better than I do for sure. I think what the computer was wanting me to do is get this pawn out of here and get ready to fanchetto to control this long diagonal. So if you're not used to doing that, that is a good idea. I highly recommend it. Try that opening sometime. Playing against these bots is fun. There's no pressure. It's not a live person. So I love to go to chess.com and go through these bots. And please check out some of my other videos where I go through them. Okay, now this I want to talk about. If you've seen some of my other videos, you've seen me do this before. I love doing this in an opening when I play the black pieces. Computer says it's an inaccuracy. Okay, fair enough. I got this idea from one of Robert James Fisher's games, Bobby Fischer. I saw him do this, and so I've now included it into my repertoire, and I love doing this. Computer says it's inaccuracy, and maybe there's something that I'm not seeing. Okay, but I really like it. I don't know. Try it out. It's not very popular, and try it out. See what you think. If you try it out against a bot, leave a comment below. Let me know how it worked out for you. I'd be curious to know. Okay, let's keep this game going because there's 69 moves in here. Again, all these movements is just the battle of the yin and yang. I'm trying to control the center. My opponent's trying to control the center. You can't take something without giving something in return. So this here, I'm just trying to mess up my opponent's pawn structure. And Lorenzo 1800 doesn't take it. They do a castle, or he does a castle instead. So my idea here is to mess up the pawn structure, and with all this being open, I know this pawn's in the way, but I want to own these files here. So that's what I'm trying to do. And okay, so let's go back and look at this for just a minute here. This is actually a pretty good trap that happens a lot in openings. I've seen a lot of openings. I can't always remember all the opening names. There's too many variations for me anyway to remember them all. But as long as this is here and this is here, you can always block, because the knight owns that. So that's what I've done here. So I've just blocked. And now my opponent moved this piece twice. That's one thing. Most games, if they're evenly matched, only last about 42 moves or so. And if you have to move a piece twice, it's almost like giving a movement away. It hurts you more than you realize. And a lot of times, people and myself, you say, man, what's going on? I can't get past this 1800 or something, or even a 1500 or something. A lot of times, people's mistakes are, it's these little things like this, these little things like moving a piece twice. That slows down your tempo, slows down your development. If you're struggling and you're stuck at a ELO, maybe, be honest with your game. Are you moving pieces twice? What's going on there? Stuff like that. And I make plenty of mistakes, and you're going to see plenty of mistakes in this game, and you already have. And so here, computer says, speaking of which, computer says this is an inaccuracy. My idea was I wanted to go here and take this bishop and mess up this pawn structure even more and expose the king. So, I shouldn't. Here's the problem: is that's kind of too aggressive at 1800 Lorenzo. And he's not going to let this happen. I should have known better. So here I am, messing around with something that just isn't going to happen. And now my knight's up against the board, which means it covers a lot less squares. So I probably should have abandoned that idea. But that's what happened in the game, and all my games I post them as they are. So I want to look at that. I was really hoping for an exchange, and then to get my knight back into the key square again. That f6 is where I like for my knight to sit. It's a great protector of the key. Okay, so it didn't happen. So yeah, I think the problem is now I look like a hypocrite because I'm right back where I started from. So I think the computer was saying, instead of doing that, get this other piece out here, get something going, get your pieces out there. So, okay. Now that there, I've done this kind of thing before, where the knight sacrifices itself, but you pick up a couple pawn, you're really only down 1 point, and you're in a much better position. So that's why Lorenzo did this. So yeah, he did lose a knight, but I also lost 2 pawn. 1 knight is worth 3 points. 2 pawn is obviously 2 points. Okay, and now Lorenzo's in a much better position. So okay, so just getting these rooks in the game. My rook's been just sitting here. Let's get them out there. Let's get them working. Okay. So I'm just trying to attack this queen. Okay, and now I do not like this. This queen and this rook is lined up. Very dangerous for me. I've got to do something about this square because there's a lot going on. I know I can defend it here, but it needs a little help. And so that's what I'm doing there. Okay. So yeah, this was an inaccuracy because, yeah, I mean, I'll definitely exchange, and that's a pin. That's an absolute pin. So Lorenzo will retake, and then this rook and queen are no longer lined up. So if you watch this, you'll see. And there we go. So we no longer have the queen and the rook lined up. So that's great for me. And here, I missed this in the game. I should have came here with my queen, or with my knight, I'm sorry, and attacked this queen. So the reason why is because I should have came here is because my minor pieces, my minor officers, I have 2. My opponent has 1. Okay. So that's great for me. Let's look at the major pieces. You should always stop and do this when you're playing chess. Major pieces. I have 2, and my opponent has 2. Okay. So if we could have done a queen exchange, that would have been great for me. I would have had 2 minor against 1 minor, and we each have 1 major. So But that's not what I did. I missed that in the game. I was kind of eyeing this and had some other things in mind. So, but uh, it was definitely an inaccuracy. Okay, so I still have to be careful of this square right here. I do have one defender here. Um, you know, if Lorenzo takes with the bishop, I have to be careful. I'm okay right now. I'm covered, but do have to be careful. So, okay, and there it is. So Lorenzo does take, and I have this situation covered, but just barely. And this is kind of thing I wanted to show you. So now this is lined back up again. Now this is trouble, because if the queen takes this knight, then I take, then this rook comes and takes, and I've lost my advantage. Right now I have an advantage. That would be back down to an even fight, and I want to keep my advantage. So the idea I came up with was check, and so Lorenzo takes, and now I take, abandoning my knight. However, and this is the key to this movement right here, and this is the thing you got to watch for. It's check, and check has to be dealt with. And so there it's dealt with, and now I get to come back down and defend my knight again. So now I'm whittling this down to a much easier game. I have a slight advantage. That's what I do with all my games. Win once in a while, something about a blue moon or something. No, every time. I just look for a slight advantage, and then I whittle it down to an easier game. So let's take a look here. So I thought about doing this exchange, but here's the problem. I like this messed up pawn structure for my opponent. I don't want a messed up pawn structure, but I want my opponent to have a messed up pawn structure. So if I take, then it takes back, and then it's going to have its pawn structure back. These little differences are the key to winning chess games. So I decide to abandon that idea. The queen is still protected. I'd love to get it to where I have a knight and my opponent has no officer, no minor piece. So now I'm thinking, okay, now there's check. Now I'll do your trade, because your pawn structure is still messed up. So that's great for me. Okay, so now we're into a pretty good end game here, and this is exactly what I wanted. I am down one pawn, but it's a double stacked pawn. And I have a minor piece, and my opponent does not. So I've defended that. Knight, I didn't want to move it. I've got to get this king in the game. A lot of times in the end game, it's scary to get your king out, but you've got to use it. Don't just hide it in a corner like this. Get it out there, and you'll see why here. This becomes crucial. Okay. So I am here. Again, I didn't want to, I liked my knight being in the center of the board. Because I had started moving this king, I was able to protect my knight and leave it in the center of the board like I had wanted. Okay, now here, you have to evaluate what's your biggest problem and start going after it. And I should have started on this end, like the computer said. Obviously, I did not see this in the game. I didn't see it until I analyzed it, and then I saw when the computer said where I made that mistake, and was like, oh gosh, okay, yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get back to it though. Just trying to, this pawn still, in my mind, poses as a threat, because something could happen. That king takes this out. This could be a queen. I mean, you would be surprised how many games that I had under control and should have won, and I've just royally screwed it up. Yeah, you'd be surprised at how badly I can screw things up, even though it's going my way. So let's try not to let that happen. So now, I did this. Yeah, computer says it's inaccuracy, and computer knows better than I do. I'm sure there's better moves, but I just saw an opportunity that you want to take this pawn, I'll take yours, and I'll take my knight, and I'll hop back over here, and I'll start working this side of the board. Okay, so that's what happens. Now I don't have to worry about that. I can get my knight back into the game, which now the game is over here. And let's get that going. Okay, so now I'm eyeing this pawn here, and I absolutely take it. So, yeah, I thought about going there just to get my knight in here, and that's definitely what I should have done. This computer still says this was an excellent move, but it wasn't the best. Just because my opponent would have to move. This king here owns all these squares, so I'm trying to block off this king from getting over here. I don't want this king to come over here somewhere. So yeah, again, I missed that again. This was a mistake, or an inaccuracy, sorry, inaccuracy on my part. Okay, so let's keep this going. And so there's just some exchanges. Now I need to, my main focus is to get rid of this pawn and get this guy promoted. I've got to cut off this king. I don't want this king to come over here. Well, he can't go there because of that, but I just mean, in general, I don't want him to come over this area. So, so now I at least own this. So I've got to stop that king. Okay. Now I want to show you something here on these endgames. In this situation where you're trying to promote a pawn, and it's just like a king and a pawn. Now I know I have a knight here too, but right now I'm really just working the king and the pawn. Get that king on top of your pawn, and you'll see all that come together here pretty quick. There, that's what you want right there. You want your king on top of your pawn. I mean, look at all these squares that the king owns. Okay, so now eventually I'm going to promote this pawn, and that's exactly what happens, and I'll show it to you. Get rid of that guy. Now I'm back on top of this pawn again. Just remember that. And that cut off that king. Look at that. Get that king cut off so this can get promoted. That's exactly why you get on top of that pawn during your end game. Okay. And from here, I'm just trying to build a box. So now I own this, and I own all this. So now I have just a, this is the small box. The king, I can sit there all day. This is the area, this is the only area the king can go to now. And so a queen by herself can't do a whole lot. It takes the aid of another piece. I could have got the knight in the game, but honestly, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I have more experience with the king and the knight, and so I saw that this is a win. It's just a matter of a few moves. Maybe there is something better with the knight. Knights are difficult to visualize, at least for me anyway. So, okay, now look here. This is great. So now I have an opportunity to make that box I was talking about even smaller. So now I've totally cut off the king. There you go. It's half the size it was. So, but the queen by herself can't do anything. Get that king in there. Let's get it helped out here. So, okay, and now it's mate. So that was the big idea I wanted to show you. I really struggled with this game. 69 moves. Had a tough time with it. Made a handful of inaccuracies, a couple mistakes. I really had my hands full with this Lorenzo 1800. And I tried to hurry up and get to the end game where I could talk a little more. Some of my other videos, I concentrate more on the openings or the mid game. But I just really wanted to show you, it's those little advantages that make all the difference in the world, especially like if you get to a certain ELO and you're stuck. Ask yourself, are you taking advantage of this little chipping away little by little? That's how you win these games. So I hope that helps. And these bots are a lot of fun. And if you like this, please like and subscribe. That'll encourage me to make some more videos. And I'm going to keep going through the chess.com bots and have a good time doing it. So thanks for watching and have a great day.